To my new stream, but this time I'm returning to stream League of Legends. This time not necessarily in terms of gameplay, but in terms of actually discussing pro play, because this is something that I am the most keen on, I would say. This is my usual topic that I would love to talk about more, not only just in streams, but maybe also in future content on other sites. So, just like in the title, it's about World's Meta, because we already have changes of 12.18. On top of all the changes, let me change my position of my microphone really quick, because it might be a bit too much and it might be a little too loud. Let me turn it off a little. Maybe +2 decibels. Should be enough, I guess. Because I sometimes have the problem of my microphone being a bit too quiet. Oh, okay. I mean, I also have the properties, the line here. That does tell me that I might be a bit too close to the microphone. I do want to save your ear holes, so I cannot afford to be a bit too loud, but I also cannot be affording to be a bit too quiet. So we can move on to the tier list section, I would say, because this is what I want to do personally. Spoiler that apparently tier maker saved my settings of my last tier list that I made, because I was making a tier list for top lane off stream, should I say, and apparently you got everything saved. So let me actually do it. So I did upload it earlier on Discord, and with discussions that we had, I should probably move Maokai much lower, probably still mid to pick or ban presence, because with all the changes that he's getting, he might be an okay triple flex champion. He might be okay to B1, maybe not always necessarily in the top lane position, but we got to keep it in mind, because obviously a triple flex champion is definitely nothing to scoff at. Albeit Maokai does have weaknesses that I was thought about. Mainly that his lane is absolutely garbage, generally speaking. So that he is more of a scaling tank, but who does not have the best early game trading power akin to Ornn, because Ornn obviously does have a nice chunk of trading patterns to actually trade with enemies. It's no secret that Ornn is all the classes that were sometimes mentioned, the name was speaked out. Maybe I could consider moving Renekton a bit lower down the tier list, because he is no longer going to deal the same amount of damage with just below the Rune King and then into full tank like he would probably like to, with items like Iceborne Gauntlet and Below the Rune King that were combined together, often as a 2-item power spike for Renekton, because they will guarantee him being really sticky, dealing decent damage and being really durable. But because he got the base numbers on his Q changed in favor of bonus AD on his Q, he might not be necessarily the same champion, or at least might be forced to more prowess claw builds, which have been popping up from time to time in matches of pro players. Looking at League of graphs for everyone interested, you can see a fair bit of either Go Drink or Prowess Claw. So it's definitely a bit of a dynamic shift, albeit we see one game where there was still a try for Iceborne Gauntlet, or should I say Frostfire. Iceborne was before the preseason 11, should I say. But I still don't think that he's going to be knocked down the peg as much. Albeit he could be, because he's no longer going to have as much power without damage items as he otherwise would. Because obviously Frostfire Gauntlet is cheaper in relative to other items that he is probably intended to buy. So I may move him down. So Atrox is supposedly really strong. He's still counterable by many themes because he definitely can really only play around enemies that also want to come close to him, because then he can keep them at bay with his sweet spot Qs and the chains to prevent them from running away. He's okay as a PN champion, but that is not really what he really wants to do. He wants to be in the thick of the things. He wants to brawl with the enemy team, and they compositionally have to brawl with Atrox for him to be the most effective, because that's where the most of his tankiness comes from, dealing damage to enemies. And not every composition does let him get those sweet spot Qs. Okay. Not every team composition lets him get those sweet spot Qs for more Omnivamp from both E and his active ultimate. Obviously he does get an increased movement speed so that he can somewhat catch up to cutting enemies, which may be also why pros still value Atrox so much, on top of many counters of him that would generate or traditionally do better and good into him being of lower priority. Albeit Camille has been buffed, and we can move on to her real quick, because Camille has been buffed on this patch 12.17 to have not only more shielding from her passive, but also to do absurdly more damage with from E. And even looking at the pro play matches, recent ones, we can see that there's a pretty decent influx. I would even say a good influx of Camille matches now from pro players of varying ranks, of both players who are at Worlds and not, but you can see that they are definitely playing this matchup more and more of Atrox with Camille and such. They're definitely playing more of a still with generally Ignite and TP into more aggressive matchups. So I suspect we could see more of Camille, especially since Ornn has been basically untouched, and Camille throughout the last summer split, she may have had a low presence overall, but if I recall correctly, she was often picked into Ornn to punish that pick. Actually, let's check the Camille match history. I think it should be mostly into Ornn as of now. I mean into Atrox too, because she's also a decent champion into Atrox, yeah. Relatively speaking. I can't remember if in Atrox's heyday if Camille was picked overall into Atrox. Yes, I remember Irelia being a bit of an answer, and Atrox himself being an answer to her god. That's too late, I mean. But I will need to check 2019 just to see the historical perspective if Camille was picked into Atrox, because it might be the case for this Worlds, maybe 2019. Roll top run. Seems to be a decent chunk of Camille into Atrox here, because from what I remember, I'm not top lane expert unfortunately, but from what I all remember is that Camille has playing and trading patterns that can directly be annoying for Atrox, because she can still hookshot out of his damage, out of his sweet spots, and then can subsequently abuse him in the silent, because you generally not only have her true damage on Q, but also she will be still very mobile for Atrox, and she will often also build items like Ravenous Hydra, which she builds even to this day, to absolutely win in this pushing matters. Yeah, it seems to be a good chunk of Camille versus Atrox. Not necessarily only into Atrox for season 9, but you get the picture. Because it's been some time since we've seen Camille being meta. Ever since her nerfs ahead of Worlds 2021, she started to lose some of her dominance. She was no longer picked as prominently, because we can see that she's actually gotten not as many games in Summer Split. Obviously because the meta has changed since then, and since then enchanters have popped up to be absolutely dominant with specific ADC pairings. Tryndamere, Sivir and Zeri, with either their Yumi or Lulu being the dominant force, especially Sivir since her mini rework in 12.13, which means engage had to generally come from the top lane or jungle position, which often left Camille unable to be picked as freely, because she does not provide the traditional tanking duties for the hyper carries. And obviously Camille jungle is garbage from all the nerfs that she got to stop her from being picked in the jungle for a long time now. But because there will be a probable influx of Atrox and on the mid pick ban section will usually revolve, at least in my eyes, revolve around champions that will be good answers into both these champions. Fiora will definitely be a very good answer into Atrox, although Atrox doesn't have to feed to then be a bit stronger in the team fight. But again, it's composition wise, it's not as black and white as people may think it is. Well, apparently my screen is... Is it actually like this? Not quite, but it was not fading the screen, I just noticed, sorry. I just noticed it didn't fit the screen quite as much. And so we'll probably see a decent influx of Gwen, Camille, Fiora, because they will be the most prominent into those two champions. Irelia might slightly come back, but I am not exactly sure. Although the meta for Worlds will definitely change a bit with the ADC, especially with the bot lane changing from all the Sivir Zeri combinations to probably a more diverse meta and a lower influx of enchanters, which means we will be more open to more aggressive picks like Irelia, like Camille, like Fiora, like Gwen, or like Ione too, who also already used this Summer Split to counter some of the champions, like Na, who could be used into maybe Atrox. Just remember, this is an okay matchup for Na. He is ranged and can try to dodge damage from Atrox. He can still hop away and try to play around that cooldown, because mind you, Atrox's W has a long cooldown on the early levels, and you will, if I remember correctly, generally max it last. So for pretty much the entire laning phase, your W will be on a long cooldown, or at least on a longer cooldown than Nars, so E in mini form, or even in mega form, because it's also a jump, albeit not of the same possible length as mini Nars E jump. And again, now I can probably poke Atrox and try to deal range damage to Atrox, to the Darkin. Also, by the way, if I remember correctly, I've read recently that Darkin is the singular and both singular and plural form. So you don't say Darkins, but Darkin. Even if no matter if you try to mention one Darkin or multiple Darkin. Apparently. Sejuani can still be picked because she's still a decent tank, especially when Ornn is banned, or maybe to handshake into Ornn. But also Maokai rises up as the possible tank to also be added to top laners repertoire to either handshake the lane or try to do stuff into other matchups, albeit as I mentioned at the start of the stream, Maokai doesn't necessarily have the best options into a lion's share of what I've listed as possible top lane picks. So it might be very difficult for Maokai to find place in the top lane unless we see a huge influx of Ornn pickers. But at the same time, Atrox is probably a more preferred blind option because he can deal with tanks generally. Thus, they can be dissuade more from possible picks. Albeit most top laners, at least in recent matches, still opted to pick Ornn into Atrox. We can actually check it to verify ourselves so that we are not lying at all. Ornn. Yeah, Ornn was picked a lot into a multitude of more carrying matchups. Into Atrox, we can see interacting, which Ornn does counter. We even saw that all the way back in season 9 when tanks were pretty much obsolete, yet Ornn was still picked as one of few answers to Renekton at that time. So historically Ornn is a good matchup in the Renekton. We can see Ornn into GP, into Atrox, into Quen, into more carrying matchups, and sometimes tanks. He does relatively okay. Obviously, a multitude of attributes, a multitude of factors do play into whether a champion wins or not, but there are still some theory play patterns that dictate whether or not a champion is good into another champion. And Ornn is obviously still a tank, so you need to commit into having a bit more of a different play to accommodate for lacking damage from the top side. Other picks, Cannon can be okay. If I remember correctly, Cannon is also sometimes picked into Atrox. Into Ornn can be picked, albeit not as prominently, because Ornn is, if I remember correctly, a bit more suited into weathering the ranged top lane storm. Not only due to him having more kill pressure onto them, but he can still have them too. He can still forge half regeneration items while in lane. But generally, Cannon is more picked into Nah. Oh, I forgot. I had to read chat. Hey, Lean. What do you mean slow mode? I'll check soon. So again, generally Cannon is more picked into Na, and Na is picked generally into Atrox or Ornn, although at least from my personal experience, Na can struggle into Ornn. Generally the more resilient anti-tank tank, should I say. Oh! Oh, it's a slow mode for telling me. I'd rather focus on what I try to say, because obviously, I mean, it may not be obvious, but when I do struggle a bit trying to speak too fast. You could have already seen that during my IPL Core tournament, where if I try to be a bit too fast in the way I said about things, I often lost the track. I often lost the train of thought, and I couldn't precisely describe what was going on. And so I also want to somewhat take time to not really be. Thank you. was I? That's why I prefer taking it a little slower so that I do not get lost in my train of thoughts. Because generally I do not catch up to what I'm thinking. My thoughts are definitely way faster than what my brain can be capable of processing into speech. Anyway, these champions here may have a decent pick rate, but they're generally not going to be picked near as prominently, or are more of counters to the higher priority champions. At least from what I think will be the high priority champions. So Gragas is still a possible champion, albeit he has fallen a bit out of favor because now the most popular build for him is full AP, and you don't really always have the possibility of picking a full AP champion in the top lane position. Albeit now that engagers might be coming back a bit more in the World's patch meta, we might see more of Gragas possibly, because AP damage from both top and mid will be more serviceable. Because previously you didn't really get to afford it due to the Enchanter and Hypercarry meta. And also jungle Gragas maybe could have seen play, but his career is weaker than the most meta junglers in pro play, which kind of invalidates him from what I remember about his career. He was pretty slow, and then he doesn't really have his unique perks. He's got them taken away by some other champions that suited the meta more. Maybe if Yasuo was more prevalent, then maybe we have seen more Gragas in general. But then Diana exists. That's a champion that can be also pretty good. Oh wait. Yone is more of a pocket bit of a few players. I can do some damage into certain champions. He should be able to match into some of the counters to these counters, and into Ornn himself he can bully him in the side lane later on. Sion, I'm not sure if I should keep him in low pick ban or in the Shan G tier, because this is a pick that realistically so far only Sanyo Cho from Jingdong Gaming is playing. At least to the extent that Sanyo Cho played. And he was definitely a decent beast on Sion, building tank and being a good frontline for his team. But I think more pro players are suited to playing Sion. They might have him more as a pocket pick than, say, being exactly in the Shanzi tier. So he may see a few more picks. And also he can still go with Senna, while Senna is fasting. So it could also keep him as a possible flex. I wonder if people would play Sion jungle at Worlds. Probably not, but it would be funny, because you can technically actually do a 5-can clear with Sion in the jungle. You can watch Happy Chime video on Sion jungle. Do not care about Omnistorm because on that video, because the rule has been removed since preseason 12, but the clip should be still the same. GP should still be an okay matchup. He could still be picked alongside Ornn to handshake the top lane, because it will be then a kind of GP still at pushing Ornn, but then both will be having huge scaling. GP in terms of damage, Ornn in terms of utility and gold economy cheating with his mythic upgrades. But GP has been pretty severely nerfed to be more of basically only a crit champion. No more bruiser GP. Probably not even Rifles. We can actually check if pro players are playing GP still in Soraka, and if so, what builds. This is some Triforce, but I think it's much less of it. Now it's Also some Parallax Core, but seems like now it's more of Essence Reaver weaving in. So perhaps Trinity Force might not be as much of a requirement, and some are still picking Prowess Core, although this much could be GP made, yeah. So I suppose it's not as black and white in terms of his build as it could have been. Ezreal mainly into Atrox, and maybe Fiora is a relatively direct counter to Irelia, because Fiora can parry Irelia E with ease and that's the pusher. So no, Irelia generally into Atrox. Vladimir, same principle, can scale for free against tanks like Maokai or maybe Sion 2. Also having an okay matchup into some of the most chemistry picks. Jax to generally play into Camille and Gwen. Maybe he will be played a bit more than GP, and I guess because he is definitely solid counter to Gwen and to Camille, who are more auto attack based. He can provide pretty similar impact in fights by jumping in and stunning enemies. Akali, maybe if you move Yone mid, or either top or mid and mid, because this can be a really chaotic duo to try to brute force fights, and she can also try to be using some of the free time that tanks can give to her. And again, since there's bound to be a shift in the meta to force engage from the support position more, then Akali might have a better place in the meta, because then you can afford to be more nitpicky with your damage type distributions. You can go for double AP and solo lanes more comfortably. As generally you do not want to pick an AP jungler with another AP solo laner, because then the ganks are much easier for that specific lane to counter by just picking the corresponding mana rune, which is why you generally want to have mixed damage. Olaf might be an okay counter into some of the champions here. He can brawl them up and be a menace in early game, but not many pro players play Olaf in the top lane. More so they would be probably playing him in the jungle if anything. You can even see that this is mainly jungle territory, although there are some top lane picks, but these are from longer days, so he's not going to be as prominent. As you can see, Nocturne, he's going to get his AD per level nerfed by 0.5, so he might be losing 9 to 10 AD at max level. Obviously you don't always get level 18, but you get the idea that this is going to be a decent nerf to solo lane Nocturne, top lane Nocturne included. But still would like to include them and highlight them as a possible underrated pick because of the matchup, the favorable matchups he can have into certain champions. Like he can always parry Fiora's riposte even when he's going all in on the Fio. He can parry Camille's ultimate or hookshot. He can possibly parry some of the CC and trading patterns of some tanks. He can abuse them later on. Maybe even into Yone. Such Jax. And also, since the cooldown on his passive got reduced from 14 to 13 seconds, he could be okay into Syndra. I suspect that he will be more so picked as a jungler. We can even check here what pros are doing here. Pretty much jungle and barely solo lane gameplay, although he's definitely picked quite a lot. So we should be wary of that. Mainly in jungle, but maybe enough. Actually, I'm maybe putting him in the Shanti tier. I'm not sure how many players play him. And then one of the guys that are more so into Ornn, specifically. And maybe into other tanks as well. Shanti tier is for really obscure picks, because we can see a slew of champions there. Pro players could play, but they probably won't. Or maybe 1 or 2 games, especially at the playing stage where the meta is still fresh, or at least the skill level on that stage is less equal in relative to the opposition from the higher level seeds, to the point where it could be having a bit more leeway to opt for any of these champions. So Rumble is something that Shanti played. Maybe Odwana can pull it off. I'm not sure if players can pick Leah, but she definitely has solid matchups into tanks. She can dance around the horn. She can be definitely solid into other champions and can provide some similar setups for fights with her E into ult. Cassiopeia can also match tanks. She can use the as if they were food for snakes. Similarly, Kayle into tanks, but she has fallen out of favor generally because early game action has been somewhat reverted. She now can abuse the laning for free. She cannot abuse the tower anymore. Action also really spicy into certain top lane matchups. Same for Quinn, especially into Renekton. And since top teleport, while still pretty mandatory, is no longer 100% mandatory, you could see some Quinn into Renekton specifically, but maybe into some other champions as well. I think it's probably mainly into Renekton. Cho'Gath mainly into Sion, but maybe into Ornn to handshake the lane. But there are more other choices that are more preferred if top laners want to handshake the lane and opt for more scaling or protection / teamfight prowess for mid and ADC or even jungle in some cases. Malphite also niche pick into many AD heavy decompositions and into AD champions, but he'll generally be abused later on, especially in this high lane. Singed, specifically more of an Ornn counter. We saw that, for example, in Worlds 2020 by Bwipo. He's not playing, so you might not even see Singed, but I'm throwing the wrench here so that people know that he may evict. Darius also could be used to abuse some of the tank matchups, but Darius is very obscure and doesn't have many ways in pro play, as there are generally champions there that will generally outkai him and thus disable his potential. Zac, also something that Odwana played into one. Shen, maybe? Now that the AD duelists will be a bit more prevalent, he may return to Silence. Especially since you'll still probably see a decent chunk of heavy auto attack focused ADCs. So using teleport and then trying to use W right away can be a decent play. Shyvana against something Shanzi has played, and some players outside of China did play in the regular season, but has fallen out of favor from what I can see. But she could still be back possibly, maybe some of the matchups. And scale relatively free, and especially bully GP. Maybe not necessarily bully, but have a good matchup into him because her Q attacks twice, plus he cannot pretty much proc barrels and can easily chase him down on the side lane. Tryndamere could be okay into some matchups, but ever since his nerfs around the MSI 2022, he's been nowhere near the same. Poppy can be okay as a tank and into certain matchups, but generally I'm not sure if she will be seen as much. Maybe in the jungle, because there will be still possible champions that she will face. Jace, for you leading her. Maybe once or twice, but improperly he's definitely suffered. I mean, he can always still bully champions, especially tanks, but poke has been quite nerfed. And popping off on Jace now will require a bit more finesse. Although we can check if pros have played some more James games now. Well, a decent chunk. So he's not as absent as I thought he would be. So I guess maybe a game or two. Not that I mentioned already. So now we're throwing that all out of the window and instead trying to create a jungle tier list. Not sure. Maybe Rumble can stay here. I should save Warren and Atrox, albeit they probably won't ever play Atrox jungle. Neither sure. Excuse me. Nay. Maybe. Probably not Shyvana. I could see save her. Actually, no. Poppy. Nocta. And then add a few more. Five will probably be still high up. Maybe even high priority because she's been one of few junglers that haven't been nerfed. She might be pretty solid still, at least for pro players. She's not the best champion, she's not the most universal, she commits you heavily to the theme. She commits your team composition to preferably go alongside her. So maybe with Shen top lane, sometimes, as the optimal duo, although some champion combinations can allow Vi to thrive a bit more because they can follow up on her. And then some Atlas can try to play some form of ping Vi, but they're generally bad champions that you would do for that job. J4, I'm still trying to categorize. J4 could be okay, especially since we might see MF rise in priority, because she's been all over the place. You can even check that. Like, look, they are still less than day and so many matches. MF is going to be high meta, I think. So this could naturally increase the stakes of Draven, because Draven can naturally wombo combo full MF, especially into other enemy compositions that do not have as many mobile carries. Maybe even high big ban, and he hasn't been nerfed too. Let me check Poppy real quick again, because I can't remember if pros have picked her sometimes in jungle. Yeah, they sometimes have done that. Also in top lane, so perhaps you could be still mid big ban, so that you could counter some of the champions, some of the engages from more popular champions. So trying not sure, but she's still flexed mid and top. Not mid and top, although she could be still theoretically flexed into mid lane and support, but generally should be top or jungle. With jungle she will be generally paired with some of the melee top laners like Renekton. Maybe I should have done the creating the copy of the screen, maybe. Okay, I think I've slightly screwed up because I couldn't have it checked. Although I do have the tier list saved somewhere. Okay, who would be jungle 2? Who are the typical jungles? BFF maybe a game or two. Hecarim, Hecarim, I forgot. He could easily be mid big ban, I think, due to his general power. Albeit when junglers have played him, they generally prefer to be more of playing him tank and not necessarily for damage. But his tanking, his utility got nerfed pretty hard because his ignoring has as much of a cooldown, nor does it push enemies that far back, and his max ultimate fear has been nerfed, so he's more of a brawler, which may skew his stakes a bit, lower the priority, but he should still be picked by sheer power alone, even though he's getting some nerfs to his damage specifically next patch, from the patch preview and PBE. Who else? Rek'Sai probably non-existent. Lee Sin might be okay. I think I forgot to put Lee Sin as the in the top lane section, but generally he'll maybe be a jungler. Maybe even mid big ban barely because so many pro players play decent. You can even check if pros have played decent recently. Another Rise in Stonks. Although a good chunk of defeats. So perhaps he may be of pretty high pick ban priority, but he might be a bit of a bait pick. He can be countered by many stuff in the world. It's just that players have basically played pretty much every jungle matchup playing as Lee Sin, plus they feel more comfortable playing Lee Sin in those matchups because they've found many outs of certain situations. But generally Lee Sin should not be prioritized that heavily. Morgana could be good. Maybe low pick ban, but also a really good counter into specific champions. Actually into the pretty good line share of the champions. Shanti Tia for Silent. Just to mention. Maybe here. Same for Diana, because she'll generally be either solo or preferably with Yasuo. Probably no one's gonna pick Mordekaiser nor on jungle. Albeit I want to mention them as possible options. Maybe Hyperio for Nocturne. Viego could be here. Kindred maybe? Who else? Okay, maybe Shanti too. Who else? We probably won't see Nunu, but neither Ivern, but we might. Actually, no, probably nobody's gonna play Ivern. Maybe Katos in Shanti too. Same for Fiddlesticks, because inspired as awards. So he may get some target bans. Maybe Graves, because his late game clearing capabilities have been buffed. While his early game has been nerfed, we can check if pros have played Graves. Holy, a lot of Graves. Seems like they're onto something. So we can probably see a good chunk of Graves in Worlds. I mean, his competition has been nerfed. And while his early game clear has been slowed, he can now perform better. Which could be interesting. Who else? Who else? Ah, the jungle meta has been so scuffed. Maybe Skarner? He's seen some play in Summer Split. As a possible answer to a decent chunk of champions present here. I'm still trying to find some other champions that could fit the criteria. I could be played them properly. I don't think this is Evelyn's meta. Generally because she excessive power farming and she's not really good. Maybe in Italy because of Renekton. You could see Renekton in Italy maybe once or twice. And T-Pros be baited. Wildbear maybe, but he's been dropped since his nerfs. Multiple him. The Trundle maybe? He could be good. Let me check actually if pros have played Trundle now. A decent chunk. We might still see some Trundle. Although if I remember correctly, actually let me check. Trundle. Trundle. Patch history. Yeah, the cooldown has been increased by 3 seconds of his W, so his Q would definitely be a bit slower, but he'll generally still suffocate many of the meta options. So he might be fine. Maybe low pick ban. Maybe, but he should generally be fine. Same for Wukong, because while he has his movement speed nerfed severely by 5, okay, I might be poked at, but movement speed buffs and nerfs are no joke. They can definitely change how champions move on the map And we can't forget that W that he got buffed initially can still cross walls, which definitely enabled him to be a jungler in the first place. Because funny enough, his bonus E damage to monsters, while still increased in relative to all the years that he hadn't gotten any jungle specific buffs, it's much lower than when he initially got them. Not only do you use 120% bonus damage jungle masters VP, when before it was 150 on 10.4 they introduced the buff. Let me check. I think it's, yes, it's like that. Where's it? Wait, it wasn't on 10.4, I think. I think yes, it was on 10.25. 50% bonus damage against monsters only. Introduced in preseason 11. But he wasn't meta at all until all these buffs that he got right at before MSI, with W allowing him to cross terrain and his damage being increased to 180%. But since then has been nerfed to 116% and then now 120% of normal damage. And he still was very high priority, which is funny, as the multiple counters to Wukong, generally speaking. Sadly, one of them, Udyr, is not eligible for Worlds. Well, maybe I could tell you into the Shanzi tier. She might be included at some point in one's professional draft, but generally she should be played mid lane, and she'll still be a relatively good mid laner. Who else? No one's gonna play Targ jungle, I think. But let's include it for the sake of knowing that he exists. Same for Ivan. I kind of wish pro players played more jungle champions like them. At least explore more options. Maybe Pantheon in low tier? Yeah. I forgot that Pantheon can jungle. Yeah. Okay, so Vi would generally be alongside Java Nocturne would probably be of high priority. Maybe alongside Hecarim too, because of the general power level. While Nocturne did get those AD nerfs, they are most centered to his soul lane prowess, as jungle gets not as much XP as soul lanes, but not as low as dual lanes, so this is more of a big enough for soul lane Nocturne than jungle Nocturne. And generally he should be fine, especially since he's a solid answer into Poppy, because you can while you are riding with ultimate, you can press spell sheet to block her W when she tries to anticipate it. Or I mean, it's easy to anticipate because there's literally a mark underneath the target that Nocturne dives into. But generally he can power farm decently against her. The reduced cooldown on the passive for Nocturne is definitely something to enable him to power farm a good chunk of his opponents. Hecarim is generally just strong. It will be a solid early to mid game champion, especially if pros opt for Eclipse. Actually, my slight hot take, Trinity Sheen items on Hecarim are overrated because the cadence between Q and auto attacking will often be very long, or maybe I'm just not playing him correctly, not timing the auto attack timer with Q cast because it is instant. So perhaps it's not me playing correctly, but Eclipse should be generally the option, especially if you want to snowball the game a bit more. Otherwise, maybe Godrika and maybe Syndra, but statistically, at least from the post I recently read, that was translated from Korean interwebs, that Eclipse kind of triumphs over Divine Syndra as the optimal mythic choice. especially when built first, and then Eclipse into Black Cleaver, which does give him a lot of Omnivamp, armor penetration, and ability haste. Basically, it gives whatever Hecarim would realistically want, without forcing you into these weird sheen patterns. Poppy, she got nerfed, but she would still be picked probably, especially into Jarvan and into some of the other lower tier peers, like Wukong, Jarvan, Sejuani, decent too. Maybe not necessarily Maokai, because Maokai can go under her skin with his W, and she cannot really do much about it. Trundle, I have no idea how to gauge Trundle. He's been not picked that many times now, because solo queue is definitely a solid tool to actually count how often a champion is picked, because especially in high elo, it's somewhat of a simulation of pro play, even though it's less coordinated, obviously. But you can see some trends in terms of picks that are somewhat correlate with whatever is picked in pro play. So he might stay there, but he might still be somewhat of a menace against certain compositions with his pillar. Sejuani, actually I might put her to low tier, because top lane Sejuani will be more prevalent. Mid lane jungle Sejuani puts more of a pressure on your team composition to pair your team with more melee champions. At least 2 more. Either solo lane and support, or in both solo lanes. It might have been more affordable last meta in both solo lanes, because ADCs were all the business. But I think generally you should have a melee support, and preferably a melee top laner with Sejuani jungle. So this puts a good amount of restrictions onto Sejuani's team comp. Olaf can power farm well. Oh, he's not picked at all that much, yeah. So he could drop him lower here, or even into Shanzi tier, I'm sure. Maybe low pick ban, because he can still be a good aggressive jungler, albeit he is not as good in terms of pro play, because his ultimate no longer provides that much of CC reduction. Instead, he has to brawl his way out, and pro players can always coordinate their movement to run away from Olaf. Morgana is still relatively niche, but she could definitely see some of a rise, and especially since she does really well into a multitude of champions near her. She can block out so many stuff like Grape Smokescreen, Maokai CC, Listen Kick, Poppy, Vice, Ultimate. Not sure about Jarvan, because she then also goes in with her, although she does block the initial part of the flag and drag, the knockup. So maybe it's that. Hecarim too. Still of champions are counted by spell sheet from Morgana in the jungle. Diana is an optional AP jungler, preferably paired with Yasuo for the wombo combo, but she can still stand her ground solidly. The out-fun other jungles, but she still is pretty team comp reliant. She's not as powerful by herself to be as much of a priority pick. Yes, exactly. The Shanzi tiers for champions that are either one specific player's counter pocket pick, or champions that will basically see almost zero play, are more likely to see zero play, or maybe see the light of day once or twice, and people will be excited. Oh, I mean, Diana wasn't picked as much even in the last split before the nerfs. I forgot that she got nerfed in the first place because of the Sunfire Aegis shenanigans. I need to check. Diana. And even then, pretty much no pro player has picked her in the last split. Even though I have said it on Premiere. She was more prevalent last time. As some of her competition rose up with other buffs like Wukong. She's no longer as Premiere. She basically vanished. Maybe even Shanti tier. No, I think she has more relevancy than a lot of these champions here. Because I don't think anyone would play Sion jungle, on the jungle or jungle. But they are still solid, at least in my book. Fiddlesticks is more of the inspired pick. Zac, I'm not sure whose, but he will be okay. Shyvana, so yeah, as a jungler, because generally right now in jungle, generally don't pick hyper farming champions because the cooldown between camps has been increased in 11.10 from 2 minutes to 2 minutes and 15 seconds, which has dropped power farming junglers from high priority. It has swapped it has changed the entire meta essentially in the jungle position to more of these early game junglers who can still provide some semblance of late game value, like Lee Sin, like J4, like Xin Zhao. Oh, Xin Zhao, I forgot about Xin Zhao. He's easily mid big ban because he's one of the junglers that will be left off to actually be proactive and also have that semblance of value late game, even though he's obviously gotten left from it. Somebody else? Probably not. Oh yeah, I forgot about Xin Zhao. Viego, he's seen better days when he would still be wrecked every now and then. Same for Kindred, because she still has answers within her kit to certain compositions, especially into On, because she can place the ultimate underneath her, and then her team can survive. Their team, because I've got the other entities, their team can survive the one combo possibly. She is definitely good into those team compositions, and she can power farm other champions on this list and also outguide some of them, like Trundle. But generally, she will be a bit of a more obscure pick because of her farming tendencies. Same for Lilia, but she can definitely be used against certain champions, especially Wukong, because Wukong generally despises AP champions due to his passive not providing any magic resist. Graves doesn't mind them as much anymore because he got magic resist buffs a long time ago. Actually, I need to check. Because I can't exactly remember when he got those magic resist buffs. I mean, he got them recently to 2.5 from 1.5 per level, so whoa. So that's almost up to 34 magic resist at max level. Obviously he won't always reach that, but you get the context that he's definitely gotten a lot of bonus magic resist, so AP champions are no longer as much of a nuisance for him, especially the later the game goes because of that magic resist being returned somewhat in form of level scaling. Maokai, with his buffs that he's about to get, his Q will definitely be much more competitive, with Q being on a shoulder, being much stronger against monsters. So he may be able to have a much more competitive clear and naturally utilize his good ganking assets from the jungle position. And generally, Maokai will not mind staying at the lower economy because he is obviously a tank, so he can afford to. And then, because he is more of a hyper scaler, while being in the jungle and using his ganking tools well, he can continue scaling while all the junglers will start to fall off the cliff a bit harder than he would. Albeit he would still give away his camps to his more product carries. Pantheon, he's a bit of a peculiar case. Yes, he's seen some play, but he's not probably going to be of very high priority. He'll probably stay in his current position as a niche pick to provide in case teams also want some additional global presence with his ultimate and some point and click ganking potential. Volba probably going to be picked maybe once, but he got over nerfed at least for pro play. Probably no one's gonna play Rumble jungle. Nor Shen. But Shen is more solo because his kid is definitely much better suited towards jungle because he doesn't have to care about his wave being pushed away while he's teleporting to save the Nalaya or make an aggressive play. Belvev, also situational pick in terms of farming. Karthus maybe once or twice because he can also power from other junglers and maybe be good into Wukong again because Karthus generally doesn't mind enemies engaging in because he kind of wants enemies to be dancing around his area and to be stuck under W and then take the main Qs, and also Karthus' global presence. So yeah, again I mentioned she would be better off mid lane probably. It's okay, Direwolf PK. Probably never picked, but again I mentioned them just for the sake of mentioning there are more champions. Like if I were to pick random jungle champions that were possible technically to pick out, include Heimerdinger for example, because his Q is definitely completed, but he's so to invades too much. At least those two can stand their ground a bit more and provide other additional utility. Okay, so I think we can now move on to what happened between those champions? Okay, never mind. I should not care. Other champions that are present here. Tolia probably high ban slash pick. Maybe Sejuani Shanzi is a mid lane, but probably not even considered. It's still just one solo queue player's obscure dream. Bumble could stay, or maybe two, because you could sometimes play Orange into mid lane into certain matchups. Diana non-existent. Kindred mid lane was Perks' idea for last season. It's like he's not there, so I don't think any pro will do that. Trundle, the Pantheon, maybe Graves, Shanti too. Same for Morgana. Actually, let me check how many players have played Ari. No. Not as many, but still a respectable amount. Probably mid-tier for now. You here. Maybe you here? Because you have more than one specific player. You have already Jensen and Caps have played this Anivia this year. Maybe you can be here. But probably still Shanti here. Oh, so I was focused on my tiers. More so passionate, but I mean I'm pretty close to what most people consider high elo. I'm pretty close to diamonds. I just need to get some wins and actually get there because I was platinum 1 but then I dropped to platinum 2. And I'm not sure if I can get back to diamond again. But I am definitely passionate and I am watching a lot of pro play and creating some environment for aspiring players to play, like with the LPL core tournament, which was obviously a bit more for fun, but you get the idea. Who else? Maybe Ezreal? I think he's still okay. You can even check. Look, he's probably gonna be okay. Maybe even alongside Talia. Maybe not. Maybe I'll place a safe bet and place Ezreal in the mid priority. Kirky low, I think, because he's more of a specific counter to Ezreal. That does give up a lot of lane priority. Albeit Azir will no longer have the same level of priority because of his W nerf, preventing him from pushing the waves as constantly, on top of the damage nerf. And then also he can escape ganks as easily. Maybe Syndra into Shanty deal. Silas could be in mid or low because he got his wave creep from Q nerfed. He is no longer as safe, nor blind creep cool. Whoa, 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 whoa. How many? What? I am confused. Let me move this onto the other page, I guess, to have it in the background, the backup, I guess. Okay. Actually, no. I don't know what to do, actually. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Maybe I can do Windows split screen. Oh, yeah, I can do Windows split screen just in case. Who else? Maybe Nocturne mid? Occasionally. Tux. Not really. Oh, Swain. He hasn't been nerfed too, and generally I predict that team compositions will also not be as pokey. So Swain can thrive more again. Maybe mid, because he's still a situational play. Because he definitely wants enemies to go in, kind of like Atrox, but to less hyperbolical extent power-wise. Echo maybe once. Probably no one's gonna go bad mid. Sorry, Alas. Maybe Galio. Once or twice. Maybe a little Big Ben. To match Nocturne's roaming potential. Maybe. Veigar could be okay to certain matchups. Same for Vex. She's seen these generally as an Ahri counter pick. Although it's not as strong. Lissandra probably still high pick ban, especially to dissuade some of other popular picks like this Ahri. I mean, she was generally picked into her. Who are my favorites for semi-final and finals? Ooh, I think when I was doing the Reddit survey, I rated that there will be Jingdong versus TES in the finals, and then I think in the semi-finals that Genji and T1 would falter, I think. Obviously, I appear biased, but generally, I think that despite Genji's power, they could be possibly not gain to finals, or at least gain to finals but losing to an LPL team. Okay. Who else? No, Doobie is not playing. Glad mid is not going to be of any value. Kiana is also Shanty here. Maybe Orianna? Because she's going to be one of the few control mages that hasn't been affected at all. Maybe even to the point that she was going to have Miyako pick and ban presence. Just because many players are not used to playing all these aggressive champions. LeBlanc will be here too. Maybe even high pick ban because of pro players having a love relationship with LeBlanc because of her aggressive power. Although I generally do not agree that she deserves the same power as she does. I mean, she does not deserve the same love as I think she does, because there are multitudes of counters into all the champions. Maybe Lissandra would rise up then, I guess. because this is a traditional Lissandra, LeBlanc counterpick Lissandra. I think Rogue has the best shot from EU in terms of getting high into Worlds, at least far. Probably losing quarters, maybe into semis, if given a decent chance or in a favorable quarterfinals opponent. Because obviously everything can happen in Worlds, but there's still some clear outliers. Probably no one's gonna pick AP Cog mid, but if anything, I would still suggest AP Cog maybe into Corki, maybe into some other champions like Veiga to use some of the weaker laning. Maybe Wanzaka by off chance against LeBlanc. Possibly. No. Yeah, maybe. I think he's got more than just 1 or 2 players playing him professionally. Even though Bixen is definitely out, but still Jensen historically played Zillion. And some players can probably pull him off too. So he can stay there and provide a lot of value, especially into pick comps. AB Varus viable at all? I do play Varus, but in the ADC position, and generally I do not play AP Varus. I personally do not like how short range I become with the AP build, because it is definitely really good into shredding tanks, but since the meta would definitely change, the AP Varus would lose a bit in value, because all those high tanks didn't really often opt for magic resistance. Or maybe they often did, but due to necessity, due to enemies having a mage. But generally, AP Varus loves more high HP targets that do not always like to build MMR, because then his W has the most value, the blight stacks. And even then, tenacity screws up so many of possible timings that you have to actually do the insane damage value combo. I personally prefer either going for hybrid on hit with an 1 AP item of Zonia to still have that some of the empowered damage, but actually have that safety, and then go for more traditional AD items or full crit into more or less tanky champions, especially Essence Reaver, because I like the possibility of restoring mana. And maybe a cap pick mid lane, yeah, but I guess adequately shanty tier, I guess, for caps, because he did pull it off in SGS players, but at least from the match it didn't seem to have the most impact, but I won't deny it. It's a possibility. Albeit Varus is really easy to gank, thus I wouldn't see him picked maybe outside of Caps' hands. I forgot about Draven Pike. Maybe, but it's just a huge maybe. Same for Zyramed, but nobody's gonna play her. Maybe an option of TF. Also, he did get buffs, but they are generally more focused towards his non-utility builds, which pro players swear to never build nowadays. I mean, he still got decent play, but not the same extent like he does who have. And then also, Silas always is lurking into TF. Yeah, I vested recently as that, and after I got his flash, my Diana just cat and didn't seem playable for him. Absolutely. Generally, this is why you don't really see vulnerable mid laners in terms of laning pro play, because the mid jungle duo coordination is just so high to abuse such weak laners. That's why there will probably a lower influx of Veiga, because his protection is really conditional, and then also heavily team composition reliant, because you buy QSS and then everything collapses, and then a good chunk of champions can within the meta can still escape the cage even without opting for QSS, like Sivir, like Ezreal, because Ezreal probably be picked, especially since he got buffed. Maybe not as prominently, but I'm sure Ezreal will see play. We will move on to ADC next. Talia didn't get much of a change. She's still probably going to be as good as she is, because pros are still able to play around her. Increase W cooldown, E cooldown, should I say. Like, look, she's picked so much still by pros. Sometimes in the jungle I see, but generally in solo lanes. So she's definitely going to be the target of the mid lane meta. Of the mid lane micro meta, should I say. Because obviously the meta is more generalistic, or at least more broad than just there's a one lane. But one lane can change it. So there's a mid lane micro meta, probably Talia is okay. Alongside probably Lissandra and the Blanc. I'm not sure about Lissandra. Maybe I'll put her a little bit lower, because she's more so used as a counter to these aggressive picks like Ahri and LeBlanc. More of a specific counter pick, but highly played by so many pro players. And she still provides so much blocking potential against dive compositions. Can engage on her own with 5 seconds of invulnerability with her almost self ult and Zhonya's. Albeit Zhonya's got severely nerfed for lower economy roles, but Sandra can still farm decently and she should be fine with buying the item third generally. I guess I agree with the notion of what LS proclaims about Zhonya being somewhat completed once you have just stopwatch and Fiendish Codex, and generally there are many items that provide nearly as much value. Although with the changes that Zhonya got, there's a bit of a gap now, because additional AP has been put more into the item, as I will only get 35, but just the stopwatch itself is still valuable. Nocturne made because he really saw Doinby, and other players have caught on to the idea on top of the buff that he got. The nerfs made this way a little bit, but he should be so fine. Galio, I'm not sure how to predict his placement, to be fair. Maybe. Probably still here, because more pro players have just been trained to play Galio over the years. He still has decent value to protect the AD carry, for example, although he hasn't shone as prominently. I need to check his pro play history this season. Still a decent chunk of picks, although it seems like he has been picked more in last split, especially at MSI. Lol, a lot of Galio picks there. But still no slouch of a pick, probably into certain champions. So perhaps we can see Galio sometime. As generally he can still wait for you decently. Actually I need to check if Galio got any buffs. Probably not. Oh, he did. He did get buffs to his Q. So his wave here is definitely a bit better. Okay. Fair enough. But also his maximum health damage has been increased, so even his more tank builds are going to be a bit better. But generally they'll probably go for AP full AP, as he's likely intended to be. Maybe an off game of Gwen, because Caps did sometimes play Gwen mid, but probably this is not the best state to put her in lane. Neither for Heimerdinger. If Heimerdinger will ever appear at Woods, it will probably be with Senna. Since we do have Damwon. Probably no one's gonna pick Cam at maybe that one game off. Maybe Victor as well pick. I mentioned that he is still going to be fine generally. Players will probably adapt to his new weaknesses. Ahri it's just the charm buff, which obviously does nerf her mid game, but I think that her mobility it's still going to be intact, and pro players can still play around her charm cooldown or duration, should I say, relatively well. It should still be okay. It just won't be near as strong in mid game fights, because you generally don't max the ability until level 14. You don't put kills into it. Should I say? Silas, he got his Q, so his wave is not good, but not as good, but he will still be solid into certain matchups, like Swain, like LeBlanc sometimes. RE2. There's a slew of matchups that he can be picked into still. Even to Zillion. Vex is budget Lissandra. She's different from her, but she does share some principles with her. She really likes to engage, but instead of providing as much cheated frontline presence, she instead opts to follow up on any engage from very safe distance, akin to Kai'Sa, and then unload her burst of damage. And then she also does decently into champions with dashes, so she can pick Victor, maybe into Ezreal, and into other matchups that he could see play, because Gravity Field is still a decent ability to control choke points. He can still it's somewhat of terrain morphing to dissuade immobile carries from stepping through, and he can still be a decent carry late game, albeit a bit short ranged. Cassiopeia French pick adequately shanty tier due to her lower range and more reliance on getting items. Albeit obviously Milan do rely on getting items, but in Cassiopeia's case it's kind of even more because she is a true DPS mage. Also Rise. Oh, actually I forgot about Rise. Maybe a game or two. Possibly even more games. That's because his competition will be different. He'll play in a bit of a different landscape, but probably not. Because obviously some of the champions that are popular in the summer split will still be really Gucci. Ramos is also an off meds up pick generally, but he can definitely outpush a good chunk of mid liners. Ornn again because he's sometimes been picked mid and can sometimes stalwart the lane. Grace mid, I don't think I could even drop it out of Shanty tier because of the Q nerfs, which are definitely impacting solo lane Graves a lot. Pantheon is also what? Oh, I forgot about Akali existing. Oh shit. Oh shoot. Should I say? I forgot about Akali. Maybe even mid, because she can definitely do well into a slew of matchups like Azir, like Orianna, into some of the mages that do not directly do well into a slew of matchups, and she can do well into the slew of matchups of mages that do not directly like enemies sticking to them. But that's in some percent canons like Lissandra, for example. Even Veigar can be okay. Sylas not so much. Corki can be Hex Drinker, although that delays his build, especially if he goes for poke, which has been net in terms of AP ratio. Morgana is probably not even considered for pro players in terms of mid lane position. She was picked mid lane in 2019 MSI, if I remember correctly, but it's been not so much time since then. The point where I don't think any pro player is comfortable playing Morgana mid lane into certain matchups that she could thrive, honestly. You know? Like maybe Swain, because she can special his claw. Akali can also be okay because Akali is a predictable skill shot. At least in terms of when she dashes towards you again. That's why Gaio is also an okay matchup into Akali. She can also spell shield, so Lissandra's engage. And Lia's engage. Maybe LeBlanc too. And Veigar. Yeah, she still got some few tools, but she'll probably use them more from the jungle position. Syndra. Elise out of the jungle meta. Elise has been out of meta for several years now. I'm actually might need to check, but I'm fairly certain she's basically non-existent at this point. She's basically non-existent. The game has far evolved from just trying to go in, and I mean, not maybe several years, because I admit to watching a lot of VODs of his streams from about 2 years ago in season 10, which was still prevalent in spring a lot. But you can see even here that since she does all some picks in 2020 summer, albeit it hasn't been as much as prominent. Generally in weaker regions only. And then this, like, you can see that she's pretty much out of the meta. I'm not sure if she will return at all. Maybe with Renekton. Oh, I forgot about Renekton mid lane. Maybe he has a one off chance, because he can still reflex to that position. Yeah, I forgot. But many more pro players than one or two can probably play Renekton mid. So maybe even here in low pick ban, not just in 1 or 2 game territory tier. I did gladly name Shanti. Yes, true hers that she's been pretty much out of the meta. I mean, you can count the number of kings that she's been played since season 10, even pre-season 10, should I say. It's this low. She's even more of an annoying champion, and then she also got direct nerfs earlier in season 11, firmly pushing her out of the meta. And also the jungle meta, again, due to the distribution of damage that you generally see in pro play, she kind of falters to fit in, because you do want generally good AD mid laners. And also she falls off the cliff. Maybe if it was solo lane Elise, then you could see more value from her, because she can then abuse mid laners who are just generally not equipped to deal with tools that Elise has, like innate healing in spider form or her dynamic potential, which she would still have in the mid lane jungle position, but generally speaking, she is far out-tempoed, even by her standards, by other junglers who can scale a bit better while also having similar early game prowess. And also generally pros have been really good at tower diving without relying on champions who are specifically designed for that. Maybe on the mid off game. Maybe. I don't think I said my words. Because her main stake was abusing the W. Maybe Kassadin? He was butt, definitely. I might need to check his presence in solo queue here. Relatively okay. Maybe by Showmaker by looks of things. So maybe, yeah, rightfully Shanti tier for Showmaker specifically. But maybe more pros can pick Kassadin, because he did get the buffs onto his Q, so that he can trade better with magic damage dealers in terms of ability traits, and then scale pretty safely. So Echo is more of a Syndra counter, which will be Shanti tier, but maybe you can see Echo sometimes as maybe 1 game into Ezreal to abuse him in the side lane. Maybe into Ari or Rihanna. Kiana, if you have an AP jungler, maybe, because she can summon your enemies, but she got severely nerfed with changes. I need to check, because I'm not sure if pros are playing Kiana jungle still. Seems that they are sometimes playing her in the jungle, but generally she's not been picked as much. Common mate is just mine. Definitely. Maybe if it was to Huni from TSM, maybe Maybe he would channel his inner 2017 and pick Yasuo or top lane to nah. Maybe. But I don't think he would, nor any top laner. Because probably top laners are not looking at PZ Zhang. PC. Am I pronouncing it correctly? PC Zhang, yeah. Okay. Should be a fine pronunciation. Action against Spicy and even worse mid in pro play than top lane. And Giovanni is just something that I mentioned. TF, he got buffs. I need to exactly check what he got buffed. Oh, he got changed, but if I correctly remember, it's AP ratio on his Q and what else? Oh, lower mana cost on his W. He could possibly then use his Q and W again with maybe record? Maybe. To then trade better, because now that W will cost, let me get the proper numbers, up to 70. Whoa. So TF can now afford to easily in mid-game fights use, especially in the sideline, use one card that is not blue, preferably red or gold, and then on the next cooldown use blue card to essentially undo all the mana that he spent on the other card, because the mana restoration on his W has not been adequately changed, so it should still be 150 mana restored with blue card. So perhaps his sidelining will be much better, as he'll essentially be able to, yeah, he'll be able to actually do much more stuff in the side lane, especially in terms of trading. Maybe low pick Banner, because pro players are used to TF. They will still probably use them and with rapid fire cannon, but at least his side laning would be a bit better now that W, he can now sequence W from one card other than blue into a blue card and then essentially trade with the enemy a split pusher. Let me BRB. Need to go to the toilet. Yeah, I'm back. So Hamidinga and Rice share some of the similarities in that they provide so much pushing power that they secure lane priority, especially into roaming champions, with Rice being able to match some of the roaming power. Wow, my finger. Hame is more flexible because he is essentially a triple flex at minimum, being playable in top lane, mid lane, AD, and APC, in both lane positions, should I say, in pro play possibly. But Heimerdinger is such an obscure pick that I don't even think he'll be picked in a solo lane. At the ADC tier next to create an entirely new tier for Phasix now, where champions like Heimerdinger will generally be placed there. Rice may be a few more picks, maybe low pick actually, because he's been played so many times by pro players. They have practiced him a lot, to the point where he could see play by more pro players. Maybe on the similar level of game time as the champions in the Shanty tier, but definitely more pro players have him in the back pocket. Those are the matchups. Like maybe Lissandra, for example, because she cannot realistically contest Rice. North can TF. I think that's it. Maybe without the least, because she's realistically going to be picked. Maybe Soraka, maybe Nivea. I mean, I mentioned that Caps and Jackson have played Nivea, and she can do well to certain competitions. Also, maybe one word about Soraka mid lane. I think she might be pre-secret OP, but generally she might be picked in the support position, not necessarily flexed. And then she also does give up a lot of pride in her natural game plan. But she does silence, pun intended, a nice chunk of her position, a decent chunk of the trading patterns. Like Soraka can place her silence Equinox under the LeBlanc, for example, when she tries to jump in. Same for Lissandra when she uses her claw. Could be similar for Swain, maybe? Also don't think people will play Abernet. Maybe they might. Maybe. Probably no Lucian mid too. Maybe Tristan mid? Maybe. And I forgot about Yasuo. For whatever reason, I forget sometimes in champions, just because they are not present in pro play. Tristan got buffed a good chunk. The last speed is actually horrendous. But let's speak more about Tristan in the next tier list for pro and bot lane. Okay. Where is it? Here. Okay, so first and foremost, I do need to create a new tier on the row below. Edit. So this is where I would put Veiga, Hamidinga, maybe Anivia 2, Sion maybe, Ornn, Maokai 2. Senna Maokai has been the thing of the past, for example. Who else will I put? Oh, Seraphine. Oh, I forgot about Seraphine in the mid lane position. Oh shoot, I forgot about Seraphine. Okay, maybe in the mid lane position, Seraphine could be more of a low pick champion, although she's definitely a triple flex and decently strong. So perhaps maybe not the most prominent in the mid lane position, although she could still see play there. Probably as high in the high position within the low pick band tier. But generally she might be picked more in the ADC position. I mean, Seraphine can be... I might move Seraphine out of Fasting Senna, but know that she is playable there with Fasting Senna. I think it would be for Karthus maybe? Although I'm not sure, probably no one's known. But I could put Karthus in the Shanti tier. Okay, Also need to get rid of other mid lane champions. I do play Lissandra bot lane sometimes, but probably not gonna be picked. So maybe Senna Swain by off chance. You here, and no. No one's gonna play Victor bot, I guess. It would be fun if they did. Zillion, maybe Fasting Senna. X-Now Galio. But at the same time, when Galio was picked with Senna, I remember it was usually with Senna farming. Let me check, actually. Galio. Role. Support. No query. Anyway, for the ADCs too, so perhaps the results will be a bit convoluted. Oh, I can sort by year, I forgot. 2020. With Senna it seemed it was generally with fasting Senna. Okay. I guess. I can't even have that, I should say. MF high also. Oh, probably not going to be Talia. Okay, you down. You two. I don't think there will be Soraka with another support champion. Because there's less room for cheats nowadays. For when Soraka comes, maybe a Brave Soul could pull it off, but I don't think. Probably still Shanti for the virus, I suppose. Tristan will be here. There's space. Okay. Now can we win around champions? What's the? I mean, Draven. How hard has he been nerfed? You can check by how often he's played. That's still a pretty good chunk. There's full of champions. So I think Draven could be even higher than an NF. I'm not sure how his matchup versus MF goes like. Just because I do not play Draven at all. Nor have I played MF into Draven yet. I think it could go either way, probably. Maybe then Varus is still a priority because he's one of the best ADCs into Draven in terms of playing without interaction. Jin maybe one more. The Chinks could be okay, but probably low pick. Also specific counter to Aphelios. Maybe even Shanty tier. Respect to depth. Lucian. Probably mid tier. Or even high. I'm gonna need to check his games now. Since the Lucian Nami nerf. He still picked a decent chunk, but probably not high tier anymore because of Lucian Nami not being as prevalent. I mean, it's actually dead. Because Nami now has to actually commit to proc the electrocute if she ever wants to run that. Instead, now she auto-runs Ezreal Galleon. And only one game out of a few that were played at Worlds 2021 when Lucian Nami was debuting. And out of all those games that Nami didn't go electrocute with, she only won one. That's how reliant on that keystone the combo was. Ashe probably still low. Also forgot Caitlyn. She still has a solid game, but she can be still stifled. thing with Caitlyn is that her early game didn't improve, but now her mid game, late game are a bit better because she now gets stronger headshots with levels, and then her ultimate now deals more damage based on crit chance. So I suppose she could be pretty strong still because now her mid game curve has been lowered a bit. Kai'Sa by off chance, but she's countered by a good chunk of ADCs. She'll be bullied by Draven. Tristana is a natural counter pick that can match her scaling. Caitlyn can maybe struggle later on, but she'll be smashed early, at least. Into Aphelios, she also sucks, generally speaking. Are there ADCs that I'm missing? Oh, I could put Ziggs into Shanzi too. Oh, Silver, I forgot. Probably still mid. And Zeri, yeah, Zeri. Probably still low, but she's not dead. She's not generally dead because she still got whatever she was used for in pro play. Her wall W crits will be weaker, plus her Pokemon will be not strong, but she can still zoom in and out of the fight, especially when it's extended, like she always did, even though she'll deal a little less damage. But I don't think it's her. She's absolutely dead. She will probably still see a few games, maybe even more. Senna maybe, but she definitely doesn't have the best time nowadays, I would say. Although she's still okay. Oh, instead of passing Senna, I forgot about the classic Kench. In that case, I can deal with big compositions. Like for example with bye-bye. Ezreal could be high, but he's definitely countered by a decent chunk of champions here. Draven can be a decent bully, a pretty good bully. He cannot hop away from Tristana pretty easily. MF will outpush him by virtue of her W and Q. He could be okay into Aphelios. He can... Sivir can eat his Q for breakfast and then run away because for some reason especially E on Sivir grants her passive movement speed. I could diverge a little into Sivir and... Okay, so drafting 1v1s are something that I could actually send you the link for. Because this is something that actually has popped up yesterday by the French coach and now content creator Duke. You should get the a good idea of what it is about if I send you. But generally you can watch it. But generally I can tell you that it's about me and someone else doing a draft on the external site, and then
Senna, Seraphine.
And then once we finish the draft, we try to decide whoever won it. It's something akin to the video that I sent on the chat now. Yeah, apologies if I'm not checking the chat that often, but I'm focused on my talking. Are there any indices that I've missed? Probably not one's gonna play on Hit Nico. Although I wish somebody could, because I really liked her, especially in Evolution. Maybe I could even move into high here. Maybe. Did I miss someone? Oh, Neil, I missed her. Probably still low because she's still... Don't worry. I mean, I do not know French either, but just the fact that it's something that I have done for like a month and a half. It's actually 2 months now. Something that I've done for that long has finally popped up in YouTube. So you can not worry about the use of the language, instead focus on the fact that Duke and the players that he faced were analyzing drafts. Okay, I think it should be enough. Let me check really quick. Samira, if OMG was awards, then maybe I could put it into Shanzi here, but no, probably no one's gonna pick up. Maybe by option someone else, maybe VCS. I haven't watched that unfortunately. Should be everything, I think. Maybe first example, like I'm sure. Ostana Cho'Gath, should I say? Oh, Ostana Cho'Gath could be okay. First example. So Draven should still generally bully other champions with these. This could be a new trifecta actually, because there's usually a trifecta of ADCs in pro play, especially when there are when so much options are banned. Maybe not always a trifecta, sometimes a duality like we had with Civil Zeri, when Draven and Crystal were pretty much perma-banned. Like this could be a new trifecta. Generally Draven... Wipers did not play at all on 12.16. The nerfs shouldn't matter too much, I guess. MF is just strong. While she did get her entire W buffs reverted, she still got her Q and changes that are definitely really good for her. She now can smoothly use her Q. And her E slowing for stronger early is really good for AD MF because she always smacks the ability last. And now that she gets the entire mid game with essentially rank 3 in E in terms of slow effectiveness, it's going to increase her capabilities of snowballing the game, because now just 10% more slow. Yes, based on the current meta, although you can always provide your own spin to it, because obviously you can try to counteract on it. That's how the drafting should definitely work, like a baiting that you can manipulate. Maybe not necessarily like a baiting, but I need to try to find a better comparison. Maybe like machine learning, should I say? Because you always modify it to what is meta, because you can see what's meta, and then you can machine learn yourself to try to adapt to it to your own liking, and then others will have their own iteration, and then you insert all the ideas into one essential box of ideas that you can then try to implement as a group or try to counter. Tristana, probably a good ADC into a slew of options. She's solid into her fears because she can blow him up really fast. It can reach close distance towards him. Caitlyn can struggle a bit later into Tristana because she will pop and then Tristana can always help. Although Caitlyn always has traps in knee, but if Tristana is smart, she can be a big nuisance for Caitlyn. And then also the pushing power. Twitch maybe into Ezreal feels, or the hyper carries like Sivir. Sivir versus Twitch is probably unbearable for Sivir, because we have seen some examples of that, where Twitch can easily outrange Sivir and just out-teamfight her before she gets the opportunity to kite. She likes to too. I'm still not sure about Varus' position. He could probably even go to Shanzi tier. I'm gonna need to check how he's performing in high yield solo queue for pro players. Not bad, but on the outskirts. Even though I like Varus as a champion, so probably maybe low tier. Yeah, actually put him in Shanzi tier. Probably nobody will pick him. Because realistically, the only Varus picks that we saw in pro play were obviously that Varus mid lane, but also Henna from Tryndamere. Okay, Kalista will still be decent, although she is definitely getting some HP nerfs. They're going to be a little lighter than what is on the patch preview, because if you were to check on Soraka 20 and the PB tentative balance changes, the effective nerf is now only a loss of 30 base HP and not 40, which is definitely a pretty big nerf, because she now has to be a bit more careful with her trading patterns, but she can still quite easily obliterate enemies. And then she essentially works well with pro compositions, even with enchanters. I mean, she was banned at Worlds in an Ardent Sense and meta, so she's not large with enchanters. Albeit she prefers the engages generally, because they have an easier time using her ultimate to the fullest potential. Afios maybe into Ezreal, because Afios can push Ezreal, and maybe into Sivir too. He's generally okay into some of the lower tier choices, but also into Kalista, especially with Lulu, although she got nerfed. But I don't think enchanters are going away necessarily. Ezreal, by the virtue of his e-buffs now, he will be a bit safer when left alone, so that he can use one less Q to then have mana for E when he needs to. And he's got general solid early game. I can poke enemies out. Sivir, she has seen better days, because she was literally pick and ban, especially when Draven and Kalista were left. And she does struggle into. She still picked a pretty good chunk, but she'll be a far cry of her own self from post mini rework. I still don't know why her W has changed from empowering her next 3 attacks to empowering all of her attacks within 4 seconds. She was relatively fine with that version, and she would maybe cause less of a balance headache if her wave here was trimmed that way. Lucian again. Lucian Nami was all the business. Maybe with Yumi, because she has her Q and R a bit stronger, albeit the healer is nerfed. Same vein for Twitch, but he likes Yumi by a long shot, because then she set up the ultimate and then he has a free reign with his own. Jinx more so into Afios, maybe into Caitlyn too, because you eventually match Caitlyn's range and eventually outranger. Same vein for us that she has a historical solid matchup into Caitlyn, and then also her DPS build has been buffed much more. Albeit, I want people to remind of what happened when she first got her attack speed buff on her Q buff to similar heights. Ashe was basically meta, although it also coincided with the meta being essentially revolving around jungle. And she also doesn't have as much of a game because of volley being this long of a cooldown. But yeah, she used to have up to 60%, and this is pretty much the revert towards that. So she's definitely not falling behind as much in terms of DPS department. So she may be outskewing her own design to be a utility marksman by having pretty good DPS. So perhaps I would not be surprised to see more of her. Maybe even to the point she's of mediocre pick and ban. But again, the W nerf does prevent her from having as much lane prio as she used to, because she cannot poke as much, as the cooldown is 18 seconds, which is very long, although it does scale again. So perhaps she is going to be an excellent mid-game AD carry. It still has an okay early game to set up for jungle ganks, but she'll definitely excel in mid-game, where she starts to invest points into her Q and W. She have a really good transition to actually do some DPS. Yeah, I'll put a bet actually. I'll bet that Ashe will be more playable. Yeah. I think so. Guys, preferably with engaged suppose that will come back to some extent. But I don't think pros will go for AP Kai'Sa, which I prefer. AD Kai'Sa is still pretty good, But I wouldn't mind if prospect AP Kaisa with Muramana and other AP items. She's still popular. She can still do a lot of work because she can follow up on engages in a similar vein to Vex from a very safe distance, and also have decent poke with W, especially with AP, and just generally relatively easy damage to apply. But I'm not sure if she will be of mid big ban, I guess. Senna. Ezreal exists, unfortunately, and Ezreal will pretty much not be banned. But also, so Senna likely not be good because Ezreal just outranges her for pretty much the entire game. Because he will not get enough souls to outrange his Q. It will need to be a game length and the amount of souls to the point where you would play SKT versus Generic Green Wings in one of the matches in 2018, and nobody wants to return to that because of how slow it was going. And it would have probably even dragged on if Faker didn't get caught out in the side lane. Just a side note. Seraphine is pretty good as an bot laner because she can provide a lot of wave and still has solid DPS. Actually, mages who can utilize the full ability haste core of either Liandris or maybe sometimes other mythic, but preferably Liandris. Then Serap's Embrace, the Cosmic Drive and Lucidity Boots to get over 100 ability haste. Can definitely have really good, pretty good DPS with their abilities to somewhat match the ADCs, while also having a generally way stronger early game. Seraphine doesn't need that necessarily, because she already has some decent DPS from her passive nodes and from a long range. But she's still a mage, so a good chunk of ADCs will not have the good game sense to play a mage like Seraphine. Nila is still a bit weird, but she may see play with enchanters like Seraphine or Yomi. She's still an interesting choice. She still needs to be explored a bit more. Vega can be okay for fasting Senna because she can create space for her and she can protect him while also both scaling it without having to rely on her external gold resources. Hammer naturally helps Senna push, and he's an annoying rat that I sometimes like to play. Anivia is my guilty pleasure with a Senna, because then you can easily set up a CC chain and provide similar levels of wave clear while also control the battlefield really well. Sion, because of W and his interaction with minions. Ornn, sometimes he was back with Senna, but probably he won't be nowadays due to low scaling and Ornn generally not being the strongest in the bot lane position. As of the current meta, obviously not suiting the previous meta. Same for Maokai, Tamkench too, because he will get easily poked by enchanters. Maybe that engages will be more prevalent. He will be picked more with Senna or even alone to protect some squishy leakers like Aphios and Jinx. Zillion, kind of a niche combination too, because of Zillion being niche himself. Also recalling what exactly the combo had achieved. Same with Swain. Not that Swain can also be possibly into Shanty tier as an APC himself, albeit he has not been as strong as an bot laner. Nor a support. Same for Galio. Maybe I could even drop him. Probably very low likelihood of even seeing Galio support at all. Probably same for Cho'Gath. But he can also scale and use the fact that he's having sustaining his ADCs. Cassiopeia bot lane, maybe something aggressive, but she's probably going to be snowball enough. Syndra, probably not even mattering. If mid lane Syndra might be in the Shandy tier, then probably Syndra bot lane is probably not even existent. Probably Como too. He's basically in symbiosis with Lulu. I know that she got nerfed, and that's not many spots for Como. Generally, due to his immobility and reliance on being protected due to that, he might see maybe a game or two at max. Same for Kalphus because he's specific really. Like as a mage, that's also very short ranged. But he does have insane push into ADCs. That may struggle, like Ezreal, possibly. Crash. Yasuo, probably not even worth anti-tier. Yasuo bot lane has been some of the thing of the past, I guess. Same with Chen, that he's going to be off, albeit with Ashe possibly rising in stakes. Same for Caitlyn. Maybe we could see some few games of Jhin as a possible counter. I mean, sort of evens out because usually Ashe was played into Jhin because she would just out DPS him, but recently at Worlds 2020, Jhin was picked into Ashe because she could arrange her with utility and just do a similar to her. So maybe at the bottom of this tier. Vayne, a bit too short ranged, I suppose. I mean, Syndra is short range, but she provides more benefit for the team and has insane way of you to naturally bulldoze her way into scaling. Whereas Vayne is basically easy to push away, and generally champions that are usually played in the pro play meta will be sticky enough for her condemned to matter to pretty much no extent. Ziggs is I think pros have dropped Ziggs since his nerfs on 11.16, but I might need to check real quick. Ziggs you can still outpush ADCs really well, but wait, not support. Although, oh, okay, Synazix was actually a thing sometimes, okay. No, I forgot to change it. Yeah, some things here and there. Not the most prevalent. Basically, he was picked with Leona. So with Leona possibly being playable again, you might see Ziggs rise up because he has a good favorable matchup into a good chunk of ADCs. He can not interact with Draven at all. Can match MF's push, outrange Caitlyn and match her push, be a natural nuisance to Aphelios and Vayne. Lucian could be a bit difficult because he is naturally ballsy. Same probably with Tristana, although Ziggs can place W underneath where she would jump. So maybe it's not the biggest problem in the world, but she can match his push. Varus can match Ziggs, but and also Sivir can. But generally Ziggs, if pros are going to risk it on Ziggs, then I could see him in low pick ban, or possibly even high, because of his favorable matchup into a decent chunk of all the ADCs that are on the same tier or higher. I think so too. Nico on hit, basically only Lucian counter, but could be picked with ADCs, but nobody's going to. Even just checking how pros play Nico. It's basically mainly top lane Nico or support or mid, not really ADC. Samira ballsy as a champion, easy to counter and properly in general. Only a select few teams like OMG are going to be there. Varus, I mentioned that he's jack of all trades but master of none in pro play. Some champions just do more damage, have more utility than him, or fit to more different conditions. He's not as annoying and broken as pro play probably sees him, wants to see him. Okay, now to support. Okay, so in support position, let me first remove the tier because this was only 4. Oh, okay, they are under here. Okay, fair enough. Also, I'll be right back, I guess, quickly because something is going on in the background. It's going to be, yes. Oh, I forgot to turn on the the microphone again. Let me first place support champion again. I'll decide which is high pick man. Probably Renata Yumi. Maybe even Lulu still. Initially. Nami no longer be existent. Maybe Nasus. Because Nasus, while on PB his ultimate cooldown reduction is reverted entirely, he still has his Wither bonus. His buffs to W, shall I say. He still has them to the point. For anyone who doesn't know, he's supposed to have his W buffed in the sense that the attack speed reduction will be 75% of the movement speed slows reduction. Which is definitely going to be pretty huge in the bot lane. And since there will be more DCs who are more AD heavy, whether in their kit or in the items they buy, and also still into certain matchups like that are just reliant on moving around and attacking a lot, like Chris and Seri, maybe we see a game or two. But he's still being not really that experimented, basically dropped since the last split. Pike could be low pick because he can hook enemies and be okay into engages because he is a bit too slippery for them, although they are too durable for him to capitalize. Fresh, he still struggles from the fact that his flay is now a bit of a longer cooldown than basically any engage tool that enemies have, like Nautilus Hook or Leona E, against which Fresh's flay was most often used against. Imagine that it was on 11 seconds and before on 9 seconds. Let me check actually. Oh, he also had his Q damage increased. Oh, I forgot. I did not realize that his Q is now back to being 100 damage and then 19 seconds cooldown. Albeit it's not on the same level as Season 8 where it was on 16 seconds cooldown. Let me check. Yeah, 16. Insane. And then I wanted to talk about Flay. Also, though, the Dark Passage has been nerfed a lot too. Yeah, it was previously 9 seconds at all ranks before the MSI patch. It was increased to 11, and then on 11.15 it was increased to 13. which kind of took him out of foreplay. Admittedly. Who else is a support champion? Brown maybe? Now that engage supports will be more prevalent. Same for Tam Kench. But Tam Kench is really quick with side AD carries. Maybe Gragas as a one-off. Same for Kalio, I guess. Or Soraka. Probably still bad because she's still only seen play a few times now, but she might be broken enough that pros might see her more, that we might see more of her. And with enchanters being and it's Crank is an okay counter to enchanters because he pulls them away from their team. Maybe an off game of Sona. Where is she? There. Mainly into Yumi because you cannot scale hard. Who else? Red maybe? With Tristana. Because Tristana can just vault over enemies to guarantee an easy Red's E-proc. Probably not Pantheon's about. Neither Shen, but oh, I have no clue. I might need to check Shen. I mean, he saw some play as a support this year. Some French, so maybe into Shanzi tier. I mean, by lots of things, the players that did play him are mostly out of words. Maybe aside from Taki, by looks of things. Who else? Maybe Trundle? Probably not Vega. Maybe the hands it's cinched. Although wait, I think somebody has played the cinch support else too, not just the hands. I think. I mean, it's still basically only Yumi counter the support position, but who was a player? Him, should I say? Oh, he was actually that good in season 8. Or maybe it's not updated, but I swear, I think he was so nearly see the play. Maybe I'm a bit blindfolded, but I think he did. I'm not sure. Okay. Still, Shanti tier because of the hand it's cinched. If KT was here, maybe Javan support would have found to place. Maybe one game of Blood. Oyster could be okay. Maybe even higher because he's okay very good matchup into other engaged supports, even though he doesn't possess as much range of engagement as them. Maybe Shaco, but very unlikely. Same for Tulio. Same for Reiko support. Yes, he has the world, but he's never picked that champion. Albeit, maybe he could pick one game with Nico and pair it with Callisto. Maybe. What's a good move? No, this is Lissandra support, which is pretty much non-existent in Pro way, so I should drop it. Maybe a Crazy Soul will actually go for Java support. Maybe. Same for Poppy. Should be has played and Soul Cube. Who else? They probably won't play Bren support, nor Zyra. Sorry, excuse me. Okay. Maybe Morgana with Atrox and Lux. Oh, Karma, I forgot that she exists. Maybe she could be even in mid because of pairing well with Ezreal and even Silver Karma seems in play. So since Caitlyn does enable Morgana and Lux, which are really going to be low pick ban outside of Caitlyn pairings. Ezreal Karma or Silver Karma could be okay. And then also Karma can truly bully some other Warden champions like Braum, like Tamkench. So her stocks rise up. Oh wait, in the ADC position I forgot about Xayah actually. I just realized because I was looking at Nami and thinking of myself, maybe Nami to Shanty tier with Xayah. Oh, I forgot that Xayah actually exists. Oh my. Oh, also Tarek. Maybe 1 or 2 games with Kalista. Because of the synergy. But I could see more play possibly as a standalone champion. Although he got nerfed a bit. So it's possible discard him. Oh, I also forgot about Malka, yeah. Probably mid pick ban because he is going to be bullied by the channel support. But he's really good into engage supports and a solid engager himself. So maybe do in the high category. This should be it. Let me check. I'm not confident Nami, sorry. Oh, Zillion. Maybe low pick ban. Or at least Shanzi tier. So nerfs to Yumi on healing, reducing her healing capabilities, but they're improving her aggressive capabilities. I may also need to check if Yumi's played now still. Yeah, a pretty good shot. Should be relatively fine, I guess. She still provides a lot of free stats for her anchor and also key and ultimate. And she's more packed with damage. Renata, because of other PS, she may still rise. I mean, Lulu probably will still be a better choice than Renata generally, even though Lulu will have Whimsy nerfed. But at the same time, I might need to check what Lulu usually maxes. Because it might be that Lulu maxes W seconds. Seems to be, yeah. So it seems that W is maxed second. So in that case, generally this will be a decent hit to mid game for Lulu because she will be down maxing her W, maxing her E. And then if she gets any levels, then her W will be less effective. I mean, she still would likely want to max W because it's still 2 seconds of a point and click polymorph, and then it can also provide some speed up for her team. But also she maybe slightly misunderstood in terms of item choices because she is basically a single target enchanter. As she is not the best suited towards Shurias necessarily, albeit some bros might still pick Shurias due to the fact that now that the W cooldown is increased, they might want to somewhat remedy it by picking Shurias, but not everything composition will be basically negated by the Shurias movement speed, and then also beautify and control usage and such. We're not the third best enchanter. Maybe on similar level to Soraka because Soraka is more vulnerable, but She can have specific ADCs really hard. She has specific compositions really hard with her silence, and it has huge healing that can reach global ranges, so she can basically save anyone on the map. Renata is still as good on anti-dive as she is, albeit she applies a little less pressure. The Kalista herself is nerfed, so the Kalista combination might not be as prevalent, but still pretty good. Maokai probably will be the premier engaged champion. I mean, this bunch of 5 champions are probably equal level. Maybe with Nautilus being the weakest, as more of a handshake versus Leona and Nautilus. Wait, not versus himself, versus Leona and maybe Amumu. Because he still has Panic CC, especially against Zeri. But generally Maokai would be also have ability. Maybe not on the same range, but Maokai would be a generous support, I think, for anything that wants to be having a tank in the support position. Because he is just going to be a nuisance to fight, especially since Maokai is also really good in siege compositions with his saplings basically controlling a good line share of vision. Maybe somewhere in the middle. Maybe Amumu was actually still the best engaged support, I guess. He may not scale as well with the lowest economy in the game, but he still has solid engage. Actually, the other just doesn't matter. They are just similar to power level, I guess. And Kama, I mentioned that she's going to be a good option into certain AC pairings with her own AC pairings. Ashe, maybe into Renata, but she still sometimes seeks play into other supports because she can poke them and then also provide the long range engage. That is also global. Rakan, he's in a peculiar spot. He's one of the weaker chanters, but still provides engage. With engage coming back, he may return to some matches. Pike, because he can abuse some of the weaker laning phases and then provide additional gold for his team. Draven Pike could be something that pros could consider. Fresh, again, it's because he got all those buffs, so maybe he'll see more play, but also he needs specific AC pairings that will really need his Lanta. Braum, maybe into mid because of engage support coming back a bit. Tanken has the same principle as Braum, but generally would be weaker to poke than Braum. Even though Braum was also not the best into poke. Blitzcrank into enchanters mainly, not really into engage supports. Alexa Morgana, as I mentioned, basically tied to Caitlyn with fuzzy cuffs. Probably no one's gonna play Hammerdinger support, if anything, then probably with Senna. Seraphine maybe a game or two. She's not going to be bad. She still has decent supporting capabilities. Nasus, because of the whiff of buffs, maybe a game or two. He still will be obscure. Gragas maybe 2. Also a decent disengaged champion, but really specific in the support position. Galio, also possible that he's good against anti-dive, but generally has been inferior to other choices power-wise, and maybe with Camille being a bit bad, maybe you could see Galio a bit more, even in the middle position, and just support. Sona against Yuumi and maybe other enchanters, but basically only versus Yuumi as of right now, as of the information that we have. Rel, again, I'm sure Tristana, Shen specific really from cooldowns, but could still have IO with his W. Trundle support maybe with Ziggs. And his spell can still be a nuisance in this position. And now that engage supports will be more prevalent, he might go for head of base again and do not trade them. Since the game is Yumi, but just a specific champion in general. Maybe he could enable some possible roaming capabilities. Maybe Ezreal bot or Draven bot for aggressive laning. Nico, Migosov, Keria with Kalista. Javan maybe once will pick it and then going aggressive, especially with Kalista. Probably another Warden, but generally with a jungle because she's pretty limited in the support position in terms of what she can actually do and provide for ADC. Tarek, because of Kalista, generally you won't see much of other ADCs being picked with Tarek. Nor even Zed Tarek, which is a pretty good combo still, but generally you won't see that too. Maybe Ezreal Tarek, because Ezreal can easily set up the stun for Tarek, but I don't think it's going to matter too much unless pros really dig deep. Same for Zillion, that he's somewhere in between being an enchanter and being a warden with his ultimate. He's basically nowhere. A bit too much of a scaling champion for pro player. Some for Sona, but she still has some merit. Okay. I think we are finished with our tier lists. So I can now talk about the general outlook of the meta that I think will happen. So generally enchanters might still rock, but engage supports will be more than fine, and the ADC position is definitely the biggest shift, because basically all the top tier ADCs that were picked in summer split are nerfed, no longer strong, should I say, because they are still probably pickable, but they are no longer as prominent, and other ADCs have been buffed to possibly overtake the spots. Basically, yeah. At least for the bowling position, jungle could change a bit because of Nocturne buffs, but some champions have stayed the same. Top lane could also change a bit because of the landscape in other areas. It'll be changing. Now, allowing more options for engage from the bottom side of the map, and not necessarily from the top side. So we could see more engaged, not just engaged champions, but some carry champions too. Mid is not going to change much. I think probably the least impacted role while it changes. I mean, Talia is still king. Ari is still going to be probably fine. Not as blind pickable. Maybe. At least provided that pros make up their mind. Azir is probably going to drop a bit, but he was okay. He's probably still going to be okay because maybe his pocket build is nerfed, but Azir himself should be okay. And pros, knowing that they play Azir, will probably adjust to the nerfs. ADC obviously changed the most. Supports also changed a fair bit. Yeah, I think the meta will differ, especially in the bot lane position, which will impact some of the champion choices. In other roles. Again, so in order, I think the changes are the most prominent are ADC, support, top, jungle, and mid. We will see. Okay, now we can go to the drafting 1v1 section, if need be. Somebody will be dead then. I'll be glad to do a 1v1 in draft day. I can use the site, you know. So if anyone is ready, I'll leave it there. But I guess nobody's watching the draft, I guess. Nobody's watching the stream, should I say. So perhaps I guess I'm ending it there for now. I'll let my throat rest. Okay. See you on to the next stream.